Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Farm Bureau on the Hill, actually, live edition of Farm Bureau on the Hill. Hello to everyone tuning in and watching us on Facebook and YouTube. We are live at the Tennessee State Capitol, and it's a big day today.
It
the
is.
first day of the 114th Tennessee General Assembly, and things have been active already, right? A lot of commotion here at the Capitol.
That's right. Feels like the first day of school all over again. The freshmen are trying to find, where their offices are, trying to figure out class schedules and waiting to get that syllabus with those committee assignments later this week. So very much the nervous energy of the first day of high school here.
Absolutely. We're here actually in the rotunda, and so the Senate and House chambers are just over our shoulders down the hall here. And that's where the lawmakers were just sworn in about an hour or so ago, right?
That's right. So the House of Representatives, they run on a 2-year cycle. So every 2 years they go through and they're sworn in. Senators are also sworn in on a 2-year cycle, but their terms are 4 years. So half of the Senate was up for re-election this year, and then half will be up again in 2 years in 2026. So the entire House was sworn in this morning. Half of the Senate was re-sworn in into their new positions.
So a lot of familiar faces, a lot of members returning, but there are some new faces as well, right? And some
That's
that
right.
we recognize in the Farm Bureau family.
Some faces very familiar. We have a very East Tennessee heavy freshman class this year, it feels like. In November and December, Kevin and I spent time going around and visiting with new lawmakers, with our county Farm Bureau leaders, and explaining, what we are as an organization and our priorities, and getting to know them. Just because when all of this is going on, it can be incredibly overwhelming to make new acquaintances. So we spent a lot of time in East Tennessee, but we are looking forward to working with all of our new lawmakers from Memphis to nearly Mountain City this year.
From one end of the state to the other. So they gavelled in. Session has began officially. What does the rest of this week look like?
So this is an organizational week, so to speak. So the new lawmakers were sworn in. Those who are coming back were sworn in. Both the House and the Senate have officially elected their speakers. Of course, the Speaker of the Senate is also the Lieutenant Governor. So Lieutenant Governor McNally begins his new term as well. So leadership has been elected. Tomorrow, they will come in and basically just continue with their organizational sessions. On Thursday morning this week, they also elect the 3 constitutional officers. So our Secretary of State, State Treasurer, and Comptroller of the Treasury. So we would expect that Treasurer Lillard, Secretary Hargett, and Comptroller Mumpower will all be reelected this week. And then finally, Thursday is kind of the day that us on the lobbying side hold our breath for, because we're hoping that the committee positions will be announced. And that will kind of allow us to set our goals for what happens while they go to recess.
And so you mentioned recess. Kind of soon for recess somewhat. Is that typical in a session that they go to recess this soon?
Yes and no, especially when it's a new General Assembly, because there are new faces. There are new committee chairmen. Obviously, with prominence in the General Assembly comes office space. So there are some freshmen that have offices that are far too large than what they will be getting when it all shakes out. So they usually take a recess just to remove offices, paint walls, and get everything officially ready. This year, it seems they're going to take a 2-week recess, although we're hearing rumbles that one of those weeks may be spent back in Nashville for special session. But a recess is typical. It's the new General Assemblies where they usually take 2 weeks off, and it looks kind of like an HGTV TV show here where it's demo day every day. Offices are moving everywhere, and everyone's trying to get settled in for the new space.
Chip and Joe going to come and
flip
some offices maybe here at the Capitol?
I would love to see that.
So you mentioned special session. For someone outside looking in, that doesn't quite make sense to do special session when you just gavelled into session. So, but what does that look like, and what would the reasoning for that be?
So a special session is also called an extraordinary session because it is an extraordinary term outside of the 114th. So assuming the governor calls the General Assembly back, it would be the first extraordinary session of the 114th General Assembly. As far as historically, there's actually not, special sessions aren't prevalent, although it seems like in my time, which is short, there have been several special sessions to deal with special things, which is why they're called what they are. The goal of a special session is the governor calls them back with a specific purpose. So he releases a resolution directing the General Assembly to return to the Capitol with a goal in mind, and it can have multiple points to it. So, for example, the rumor mill, and I cannot confirm nor deny anything because I'm not the governor yet, but we're hearing that he will call the General Assembly back to discuss matters of education. And then, of course, that all-important East Tennessee disaster relief. Our friends are still reeling from what they experienced last fall. So it only feels right the state come back and take action to help our friends. So we're hearing that those will be the two items in the call. And so the governor will limit the discussion to those two things. So whereas during a normal General Assembly, you could see upwards of 1,500 bills filed, during special session, that docket's usually much smaller because their scope is much more limited.
And so that will probably be some of the first legislation really looked at for this General Assembly. Would that be fair to say?
That's fair. So lawmakers could have filed bills after November 5th. One of our priority issues actually was filed November 6th, that first thing that morning, SJR 1. But yes, this will be a good litmus test for what the overall energy will be like this session. We talked a lot last year on Farm Bureau on the Hill about matters of education and how they're very hot topics right now. It's a very tense topic to discuss. Looking ahead, you would hope that if they discuss this, regardless of the outcome, Farm Bureau does not have a position on the matter, that once they've addressed it, we can move on and focus on other issues during session. Because sometimes those big, daunting topics tend to cloud discussion on other really important topics. So we'll see. Time will tell.
So you mentioned one of our priority issues already been filed. Kind of big picture, what are our priority issues moving into this session?
So I would say we have three that are key priority issues this year. One of which is a continuation. I feel like I sound like a broken record. I just keep saying it's a continuation from last year. But SJR 1 is the new bill number for our constitutional amendment to prohibit a statewide property tax, which has not been collected since the 1940s. As our members all know, we've told you till we're blue in the face, but we just think it's a belt and suspenders approach to make sure that our members are some of our state's largest landowners. And so even a nickel or a dime state property tax could be detrimental to their bottom line. So we don't think that if the state finds itself on hard times, that should be another burden on our membership and on Tennessee's landowners. So we just want to enshrine that in the Constitution. The 114th General Assembly starts our second big hurdle. So we passed it in the 113th with a simple majority. In the 114th, Senator Hale and Representative Darby will bring that back before their members. This time we'll have to get a 2/3 majority vote. Optimistically, we cleared well over that margin last year, so we don't expect any drama, but that is obviously one that we'll be asking our members to engage to make sure that gets onto the 2026 gubernatorial ballot.
Next.
Yes, sorry. First time live. So our second priority issue is one that is another continuation from last year, and that is the topic of farmland preservation. Spoiler alert, since the last General Assembly, Tennessee has not gained any of the land that we have lost back. We were talking with a representative earlier, and he said, you can't grow crops on concrete and asphalt. And it turns out we still haven't figured out how to do that since 2024. Yeah. So we are so incredibly thankful that Governor Lee still sees that as a priority as a farmer himself, and from Williamson County of all places, he sees it. So we don't have specific language on that yet. So I don't have a bill number to share with you yet, but we will when we have that available. But again, it seeks to provide options. One thing when we go and we talk about matters that are important to agriculture, we talk a lot about tools in the toolbox. In our mind, a farmland preservation fund and a farmland preservation program is the toolbox that our members can then put their tools in. So we're optimistic of what that looks like. Obviously, with that has to come some form of appropriation to set that fund up. And at this point, we're just dotting our I's and crossing our T's to make sure that gets put in the governor's budget. We hope that we'll hear more in the State of the State, which should be early February.
Is that kind of when we're expecting to maybe see some language from that bill as closer to the governor's State of the State?
So the governor, because of who he is, he likes to keep his issues pretty close to the chest. So his State of the State is his opportunity to showcase his package for the year. So he doesn't tend to file a lot of those bills until after he's had a chance to tell the General Assembly and to tell Tennesseans everywhere what his priorities are. So while we might see it before the State of the State, I would say that we won't hear in great detail about it until the State of the State. But once we have that language, we'll keep our members up to date. And then our third priority issue, so usually we have 3 or 4, we're rolling with 3 this year, has to deal with some crop protection liability protection. If you are a row crop farmer or you use any type of crop protection product, you know that the media and the public has often been critical of that industry. So we are seeking to work with Representative Grills and Senator John Stevens to just provide some liability protection for those companies, for the applicators, for the landowners, for the farmers, that just because they can't put something on the label that they're federally prohibited to do, that they can't be held in these large, egregious class action lawsuits that are often make frivolous, untrue claims. So just looking to take one more step forward to help those who their bottom line depends on the ability to raise a crop. And if they can't do that without proper crop protection, then they don't have a purpose.
So those are our 3 priority issues. And with that, off and going, right? The work really begins now.
Yep. So American Farm Bureau Convention usually is our ramp up. Obviously, this year it's later in January. So we'll be in San Antonio next week and a little bit the week after. And then hopefully the General Assembly will come back February 3rd. And from there, we'll be zooming until May when they adjourn.
And for those of you watching, at some point a little bit later in session, our legislative visits.
That's right.
You all will have a chance to come up here where we're standing and talk with your lawmakers and make the case for why they should support these priority issues. And that's what we really pride ourselves on, is being that grassroots organization.
That's right. And there'll be multiple opportunities to engage. Be sure that you're subscribed to our legislative alert and keep an eye on social media. We had a really good practice with that on the federal level a few weeks ago with the continuing resolution that we successfully passed to get disaster assistance for farmers. So that was a great practice. We're going to put that into full speed ahead come this legislative session. So there will be specific asks of our folks. So we just ask that you stay tuned and keep up with all things legislative alert.
Now, if someone's watching and they don't get the legislative alert, how can they get on the list to receive that?
So that you can contact the Public Policy Division or your County Farm Bureau. As well, if you are like me and you have your phone on you 24/7, if you text policy to 931-388-7872, that will get you signed up to receive those on your phone. So if there's a specific action alert, it's just one link, you click it, send a message to your lawmakers, and simple as that, you're done. So we're making it easy for you. But please, there's multiple ways to receive it. We'd encourage you to subscribe to all of them.
And also the podcast format of it. We're kind of doing that live right now, but each week that'll be on anywhere that you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, our website, tnfarmbureau.org. So you can listen to Farm Bureau on the Hill each week, and we'll get an update from you about what's going on here at the Capitol.
Yep. Once we get in the thick of it, I'm sure our podcast will be much more interesting. But for now, we're just trying to get our feet under us.
Yeah. Well, Shelby, thanks for joining us. Thanks for all the work that y'all do here. And thank y'all for tuning in today. Be sure and like and subscribe to Tennessee Farm Bureau Federation on Facebook where you're watching, or we also have an Instagram page, X, and TikTok as well. And of course, you can visit tnfarmbureau.org for the latest Tennessee agriculture news. I'm Thomas Capps, Shelby Vanoy. Thanks for joining us. This has been the special live edition of Farm Bureau on the Hill.